All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, as always, I like to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Racha HaKodash, double honors unto the apostles and elders of great millstone who rule well. Salutations to you, sincere and hopefully like Akim, pushing the word of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, in spirit and in truth. All right, my lot, which is to say 144,000 in Allah Shem Kodash, Sha'ar Yath, which is to say remnant. All right, Bachayarium, which is elect, and Achad Shalayashim, which is 1/3. All right, those are the categories that the Heavenly Father is dealing with. Ultimately the remnant that Yahweh Shem Yahushua is dealing with in these last days that we, hope we are a part of and receive salvation. All right, from the pending destruction that is due to touch down upon the earth, in particular Babylon the Great, the lake of fire. So shalom to you, hopefully elect. So this lesson through the spirit, the brothers pretty much, from Dallas, their live stream that they just finished up. We're going into, Esau pretty much about to crash out, being that he's in his final stages of rulership. All right. And, so, through the spirit, I'm putting this lesson together, and we're going to get into the circle in the sand. All right. Dealing with Antiochus Epiphanes being given an ultimatum by the Roman Republic. And, we're going to get some scriptures to edify. So, with Esau having his back against the wall and pretty much getting his ass kicked over in the Middle East, is going to cause him to take that anger out on the Israelites as, Esau did in the past. All right. Dealing with Antiochus. All right. So going into a little history, as you see here, it says from Wikipedia, it says Gaius Popilius Linus was a politician and general of the Roman Republic. He was consul 2 times, once in 172 and once in 158 BC. All right, as you see, it says in the picture, it says Popilius sent as ambassador to Antiochus Epiphanes to stop the course of his ravages in Egypt. Okay, so I'm gonna jump down here and read a little bit of this. So it says, Polybius, the Greek historian of the Hellenistic period. All right, so the period in which the Israelites were becoming Hellenized. All right, the heavy influence that the Greeks were forcing upon the Israelites by the sword, ultimately. All right, it says it added more nuanced detail in his major work, The Histories, which covered the period of 264 through 146 BC in detail. It says, at the time when Antiochus approached Ptolemy and meant to occupy Pelusium, Caius Popilius Linus, the Roman commander, on Antiochus, greeting him from a distance and then holding out his hand, handed to the king. All right, and he said it, so like as he had it by him, the copy of the Centus Consultum, and told him to read it first, not thinking it proper, as it seems to me, to make the conventional sign of friendship before he knew if the intentions of him who was greeting him were friendly or hostile. But when the king, after reading it, or Antiochus, said he would like to communicate with his friends about this intelligence, Popilius acted in a manner which was thought to be offensive and exceedingly arrogant. He was carrying a stick cut from a vine, and with this he drew a circle round Antiochus and told him he must remain inside this circle until he gave his decision about the contents of the letter. The king was astonished at this authoritative proceeding, but after a few moments' hesitation, said he would do all that the Romans demanded. Upon this, Popilius and his suite all grasped him by the hand and greeted him warmly. The letter ordered him to put an end at once to the war with Ptolemy. All right, Ptolemy being the king of Egypt. All right, the Edomite that was ruling in Egypt, just as Antiochus was an Edomite ruling out of Syria. Okay, it says, so as a fixed number of days were allowed to him, he led his army back to Syria, deeply hurt and complaining indeed, but yielding to circumstances for the present. Popilius, after arranging matters in Alexandria and exhorting the two kings there to act in common, ordering them also to send Polyaratus to Rome, sailed for Cyprus, wishing to lose no time in expelling the Syrian troops that were in the island. When they arrived, finding that Ptolemy's generals had been defeated and that the affairs of Cyprus were generally in a topsy-turvy state, they soon made the Syrian army retire from the country and waited until the troops took ship for Syria. In this way, the Romans saved the kingdom of Ptolemy, which had almost been crushed out of existence. Fortune having so directed the matter of Perseus and Macedonia, that when the position of Alexandria and the whole of Egypt was almost desperate, all was again set right simply because the fate of Perseus had been decided. For had this not been so, and had not Antiochus been certain of it, he would never, I think, have obeyed the Roman behests. All right. So, jumping down, it says Popilius Linus fleet fleet is the one referred to in Daniel 11. For ships of Kittim will come against him. Therefore, he will be disheartened and will return. All right. So, here's the historical account of the Roman general, pretty much giving Antiochus that ultimatum, all right, and pretty much stopping him from taking over Egypt, all right. So, when you go into the scriptures, all right, this account, right. Matter of fact, let me read this in Daniel, all right, because this account of him, being Antiochus, pretty much, his aspirations being derailed by the Romans, he took that out on the Israelites. Okay, and we're gonna see that all over again. All right, when more defeat comes to America by hands of those countries in the Middle East and the East that are adversaries in opposition to America, such as Iran and Russia and China. Okay, and other allies to those four mentioned countries, nations. You're gonna have Esau um, here stateside. All right, the government in particular crashing out on Israelites. Which is all explained in the scriptures being Jacob's trouble. All right, so that account here in Daniel 11 dealing with Antiochus is prophesied. So reading here in Daniel 11 in verse, let me see. I'm going to start at verse 27. I'm going to read in the NLT. It says, seeking nothing but each other's harm, these kings will plot against each other at the conference table. All right, talking about Antiochus and Ptolemy. All right, attempting to deceive each other, but it will make no difference, for the end will come at the appointed time. The king of the north, all right, which is Antiochus Epiphanes, all right, because when you look geographically, Syria is northeast of Egypt. All right. It says the king of the north, or Antiochus, will then return home with great riches, because he had a couple campaigns in which he went down into Egypt. All right. It says on the way he will set himself against the people of the Holy Covenant, all right, the Israelites, doing much damage before continuing his journey. All right, because to go back home to Syria, leaving Egypt, you got to pass through the land of Israel. Okay, it says, then at the appointed time, he will once again invade the south, but this time the result will be different. All right, like I said, he went into Egypt more than once. It says, for warships from western coastlands will scare him off, and he will withdraw and return home, but he will vent his anger against the people of the Holy Covenant and reward those who forsake the covenant. All right, so once again, he turns his anger toward the Israelites because he was halted from pursuing his, desires in Egypt by the Romans. So what Antiochus did was he took that anger out on the Israelites, okay, and in particular those that forsook the Holy Covenant. So fast forward today, you're gonna have when Esau comes down with this great wrath, knowing that he has but a short time, and crashes out on the Israelites here in Babylon the Great. He's gonna be focus on Israelites, period. But the Heavenly Father is going to have it to where the ones, the Israelites that get caught up in Jacob's trouble is going to be those that forsook serving Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, those that don't want to turn to seeking Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. Okay? All these jakes on the internet talking crazy about the Hebrew Israelites that want to hold fast to being Christians or Muslims or being a black or African American or caught up in whatever hip hop or whatever bullshit Jake is into. That's who the Heavenly Father, Yahweh Shem Shai, is going to allow Esau to really get his hands on, as it goes into in the book of Second Esdras. All right, still, spoiling and destroying those that fear the Lord. All right, which ultimately Israelites are the ones that fear the Lord. And there's going to be certain brothers that is going to have to go through certain things during Jacob's trouble. I mean, everybody's going to be going through it. All right, but the main people that's going to get caught up is the rebellious Israelites. All right, so just as in what we're reading here in Daniel 11, that's what happened back then. Okay, midway through verse 30, it says in the NLT, it says, but he will vent his anger against the people of the Holy Covenant and reward those who forsake the covenant. His army will take over the temple fortress, pollute the sanctuary, put a stop to the daily sacrifices, and set up the sacrilegious object that causes desecration. All right. Also in Second Esdras, it says that there's going to be things sacrificed on the idols. Okay, Jake that get caught up, not knowing what the hell is going on, and end up in one of these concentration camps, is going to be fed things sacrificed on the idols. There's going to be all kind of abominable things that's going to be presented to Israelites, and a lot of them is just going to go along with the flow, not knowing what the hell to do. Not knowing what to look out for, not ultimately having the protection of Yahweh Shem Shai upon them. All right, so all those Israelites in the past who willingly accepted becoming Hellenized, ultimately suffered. All right, they suffered for that. All right. It says he will flatter and win over those who have violated the covenant, but the people who know their power will be strong and will resist him. And that's what, we have to be today, is strong in Yahweh Shem Shai and resist Esau. All right, that's why the scriptures say, Isaiah 33:6, that wisdom and knowledge shall be the stability of thy times and strength of salvation. All right. So, let me see. So, let me grab Daniel 12. Let me read this first before I read this Daniel. Let me read First Maccabees 1. All right. Matter of fact, let me read. I'm gonna read Second Maccabees 5. All right, and this is in the GNT. So, going into that historical account, okay, it says, at this time Antiochus IV made a second attack against Egypt. Okay, so attack number 2 against Egypt. All right, because he went in multiple times. It says, for nearly 40 days, people all over Jerusalem saw visions of cavalry troops in gold armor charging across the sky. All right, this was chariots, all right, doing war games in the heavens. Okay, the riders were armed with spears and their swords were drawn. They were lined up in battle against one another, attacking and counterattacking. Shields were clashing. There was a rain of spears and arrows flew through the air. All different kinds of armor, and the gold bridles on the horses flashed in the sunlight. Everyone in the city prayed that these visions might be a good sign. When a false report began to spread that Antiochus had died, Jason, all right, which was an Israelite, a wicked ass nigga, a Levite, if I'm not mistaken, took more than 1,000 men and suddenly attacked Jerusalem. They drove back those stationed in the city walls and finally captured the city, Menelaus fled for safety to the fort near the Temple Hill, while Jason and his men went on slaughtering their fellow Jews without mercy. Jason did not realize that success against one's own people is the worst kind of failure. He even considered his success a victory over enemies rather than a defeat of his own people. All right, a bugged out ass nigga. And you have a lot of Israelites. But man, look at the Latino ICE agents. You know what I'm saying? They think that a victory over um success is as it says, he even considered his success a victory over enemies. All right, you have Latino ICE agents that think that what they're doing is a victory over their enemies when really it's a defeat of their own people. They're defeating themselves. Okay, so the bugged out shit that niggas did back then is reincarnated, and they're doing the same thing. All right, you got bugged out ass niggas that's juiced in with Esau. You know, a lot of these pastors. All right, these niggas in the entertainment industry, these niggas that make music, this demonic ass music, which they know that is warping the minds of their fellow Israelite brethren, but they don't give two shits because they're getting their pockets lined with money. All right. Verse 7, it says, but Jason did not take over the government. Instead, he was forced to flee once again to the territory of the Ammonites, and in the end, his evil plot brought him nothing but shame and disgrace, and he died in misery. Artis, the ruler of the Arabs, imprisoned him. He was looked upon as a criminal and despised because he had betrayed his own people. Everyone was hunting for him, and he had to run from town to town. He fled to Egypt for safety, and that's a miserable ass existence, to be fleeing from town to town, to constantly be on the lookout, especially being that, you're not even accepted amongst your own people. Okay. It says, then to Greece. So he went from Egypt to Greece, okay, hoping to find refuge among the Spartans who were related to the Jews. All right. And when you read this in the KJV Apocrypha, it says the Lacedaemonians, okay, who were related to the Israelites. Finally, this man who had forced so many others to flee from their own country died as a fugitive in a foreign land. All right. Jason had killed many people and left their bodies unburied, but now his own death was unmourned. He was not given a funeral or even buried with his ancestors, which is a disgrace. That's a dishonorable way to go out. It says, when the news of what had happened in Jerusalem reached Antiochus, he thought the whole country of Judea was in revolt, and he became as furious as a wild animal. So he left Egypt and took Jerusalem by storm. All right. So Antiochus, which is king of Syria, being that he was in Egypt, once he got wind of what was going on, all right, which all this was started by Jason, who had thought that Antiochus actually got killed, in which he didn't. So one man's actions caused, the devil to come in like a furious what is it, a wild animal, okay, taking Jerusalem by storm. It says, verse 12, giving his men orders to cut down without mercy anyone they met, and to slaughter anyone they found hiding in the houses. They murdered everyone, Men and women, boys and girls, even babies were butchered. All right, so Jacob's trouble is not going to be anything nice, man. Okay, history repeats itself, and this being the last time our people is going to face, judgment. That judgment is going to be very severe. All right, verse 14 it says, 3 days later, Jerusalem had lost 80,000 people, 40,000 killed in the attack, and at least that many taken away to be sold as slaves. But Antiochus was still not satisfied. He even dared to enter the holiest temple in all the world, guided by Menelaus, who had become a traitor both to his religion and to his people. All right, so during the time of Jacob's trouble, you're going to have Uncle Tom coon niggas out there hand in hand with Esau in high positions of authority, looking at what's going on. To like, man, you got ICE officers in those concentration camp facilities looking at the destruction of their people, being that they can be a so-called Negro or so-called Latino officer, you know um, and see that what's going on, and not give two shits. Okay, but they will be judged. All right, make no doubt about it. They will be judged. Verse 16 it says, with his filthy and only hands, Antiochus swept away the sacred objects of worship and the gifts which other kings had given to increase the glory and honor of the temple. He was so thrilled with his conquest that he did not realize that the Lord had let his holy temple be defiled, because the sin of the people of Jerusalem had made him angry for a while. If the people of Jerusalem had not been involved in so many sins, Antiochus would have been punished immediately and prevented from taking such a foolish action. He would have suffered the same fate as Heliodorus, who was sent by King Seleucus to inspect the treasury. But the Lord did not choose his people for the sake of his temple. He established his temple for the sake of his people. So the temple shared in the people's suffering, but also later shared in their prosperity. The Lord abandoned it when he became angry, but restored it when his anger had cooled down. All right, so let me see. Antiochus took 135,000 pounds of silver from the temple and hurried off to Antioch. Such was his arrogance, and he felt he could make ships sail across dry land or troops march across the sea. Let me see. That's pretty much the point. All right, so you see the pride of Antiochus. Okay, you was losing. You pretty much lost in Egypt, and you went to Jerusalem to take your anger out on the Israelites. All right, but the Lord only allowed you to take that anger out on the Israelites because the Israelites were involved in great sin. So this is going into here in First Maccabees 1, Antiochus as well, destroying Israel. Okay, so First Maccabees 1 in verse 16 it says, now when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, he thought to reign over Egypt, that he might have the dominion of 2 realms. Wherefore he entered into Egypt with a great multitude, with chariots and elephants and horsemen, and a great navy, and made war against Ptolemy king of Egypt. But Ptolemy was afraid of him and fled, and many were wounded to death. Thus they got the strong cities of the land in Egypt, and he took the ships thereof. And after that Antiochus had smitten Egypt, he returned again in 143rd year, and went up against Israel and Jerusalem with a great multitude, and entered proudly into the sanctuary and took away the golden altar and the candlestick of light and all the vessels thereof, and the table of showbread and the pouring vessels and the vials and the censers of gold and and the veil and the crown and the golden ornaments that were before the temple, all which he pulled off. He took also the silver and the gold and the precious vessels. Also he took the hidden treasures which he found, and when he had taken all away, he went into his own land, having made a great massacre, and spoke very proudly. Therefore there was a great mourning in Israel in every place where they were, so that the princes and the elders mourned, and the virgins and the young men were made feeble, and the beauty of women was changed. Okay, every bridegroom took up lamentation, and she that sat in the marriage chamber was in heaviness. The land also was moved for the inhabitants thereof, and all the house of Jacob was covered with confusion. All right. So there was great mourning that came to the nation of Israel because of Esau, Antiochus, Epiphanes, all right, crashing out on the Israelites. Okay. Which once again, that's about to happen all over again, man. There's nothing new under the sun. So this is Jeremiah 30 and verse 7. It says, alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. All right. And you only have certain Israelites that are, claiming to be Jacob. All right. Majority of the nation of Israel is not adhering to the name Jacob or Israel, calling themselves that. They want to be African American. Okay. So they're not going to be saved out of what's coming. All right. But those that love Yahweh Shem Shai, that serve and worship Yahweh Shem Shai, that's of the elect, will surely be saved out of this time of Jacob's trouble that's coming. Okay. Jacob's trouble is for the wicked of our people, And lastly, this is Daniel 12 and 1. It says, and at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people, and there shall be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. All right, so we pray that we are indeed written in the book, because that's the only way you're going to be protected and shielded and guided, when Esau crashes out, man. All right, because Esau as a nation of people is going to crash out. It ain't just going to be the government. You got to worry about the military and, police and things of that nature. No, Edomites in general is going to crash out. All right, from a damn fentanyl drug addict, to Esau's military troops, man. All Edomites is going to crash out, and they going to purposefully make Israelites the target. Make Israel the bad guy, the problem. You Israelites out there. So, that pretty much concludes the lesson. I just wanted to go into, that historical account and, edify on that. Okay, but get your popcorn ready, because Esau about to crash out, man. So I was edifying lesson. Until next time, I'll say shalom.